What's up, ego hackers? Welcome to season 14, episode 8, the 8th golden pair. We're talking about ENFPs and INFJ relationships. This is definitely the season finale of season 4. This lecture is not about me, like shitting on the ENFPs. Actually, I'm going to, for the first time, talk about the true purpose of the ENFPs and just exactly how important they are to literally everything, to reality itself. And without them, this world will become a dark world very quickly. Now, I don't want them to be busting with their heads in pride at this point, but it is necessary to tell the truth. ENFPs have a critical role that needs to be fulfilled in order for there to be peace and harmony and ultimately a better future for our race. And we're going to be talking about that. So Raka, just understand, while I am hard on ENFPs and as much as I am hard on every single one of the types, this lecture is for you, good sir. This lecture is definitely the one you've been waiting for. So hopefully you enjoy it, and thank you for being patient with me. So that being said, because it is a Patreon private lecture for those Patreon gold tier members, thank you patrons for your support. This is the season finale. It's probably going to be like 2 hours long, and that's going to be like crazy because the outline is freaking huge, but we're going to get there together. But before I begin, viewer discretion is advised because I'm going to go all certain places, certain types of places within this particular lecture, and it's going to be long, fair warning. But then again, you're basically paying for it, so I would imagine that you would actually be able to want to listen to the entire thing. And besides, it's kind of like Game of Thrones, doing those super long episodes, because they're we typically do 1 hour episodes, but then we do an hour and 20 minutes. I think I might have said that already, but I'm not really sure. I actually had to refilm this particular lecture and kind of had to redo it, but it is what it is. I just hope to get it out in time tonight, rendered and uploaded, and then finally made available privately to the rest of everybody, for you patrons, so that you guys can enjoy it this weekend for your Memorial Day weekend. So anyway, that being said, let us begin at last. So ENFP, INFJ, relationships, the 8th golden pair. Oh, it is the dopest. It is so dope. And don't forget, folks, the importance of the golden pair is so important because it is critical for the propagation of our race in as much as it protects the relationships and absolute harmony amongst all the types. It is exquisite. It is like perfect art within our race. It is absolutely awesome. And this golden pair, as much as any other golden pair, is absolutely critical and very important. But this particular golden pair, honestly, our race, humanity, would not have a future without it. And we're actually going to dive in as to exactly why that is the case and why this golden pair is absolutely critical. That's not to say that I know I've been hammering on golden pairs in season 14. That's not to say that there's other relationships out there that could not be meaningful. For example, really, really powerful relationships in terms of marriages or relationships out there could be for example, ESPs with ISJs, for example, or ENPs with INJs, ENJs with INPs, right? Or ISPs with ESJs, etc. So there are the capability to have relationships that kind of lack that emotional compatibility, but are more based on sexual compatibility. So for example, I actually for some reason forgot to write that out, but don't forget we have emotional compatibility, which represents, and if you haven't watched this, make sure you guys go to the, it helps if I could actually spell. Go to season 5, seriously, go to season 5, the YouTube, go to our YouTube channel, go to playlist, go to season 5, watch season 5. It talks about cognitive synchronicity, okay? Understand what cognitive synchronicity means. But emotional compatibility is centered around decision-making functions, right? So TE, FI, TI, FE, right? So let's actually look at that. So we have TE, and then we have FI, and then we have TI, and then we have FE. And the FE, the extroverted functions, are trying to consume the introverted functions. So you want them as close as possible in your function stack. So if you have these functions in your ego, you want them matching or as close as possible to your other person, the other person you're in a relationship with, a romantic relationship with, within your ego. Super mega important, and that makes up emotional compatibility. Emotional compatibility, or anything emotional, really has to do with decision-making functions. Now, sexual compatibility, little bit different. And sexual compatibility is actually based on perception functions. Perceiving functions is everything. Perceiving functions are super mega important. So we have NE, and then we have SI, and then we have NI, and then we have SE, because they're both in axis with each other. And remember, the extroverted function is trying to consume the introverted function. This is why, sexually speaking, NE users want to feel wanted, and they want the NI to want the NE. It's very important. And then the SE users are trying to give a good experience to the SI users, making them comfortable, touching them, caressing them, whatever is necessary, whatever is required in the romantic relationship, of course. But sexual compatibility is based on perception functions. Emotional compatibility is based on decision-making functions, right? Very, very important. And it's no different, of course, that with both of these types, that is how it works. We have here NE trying to get with NI, and FE trying to get with FI, and TE trying to get with TI, and SE trying to get with SI. And same thing down here, NE trying to get with NI, and FE trying to get with FI, and TE trying to get to TI, and SE trying to get to SI. Notice, folks, notice how they match all the way across the board. Okay, so anyway, emotional compatibility, sexual compatibility, and because you can see how the compatibility goes all the way across every single function within its cognitive spectra, which is hero to hero, parent to parent, child to child, inferior to inferior, etc. All of those bases are covered, right? And that's what makes it a golden pair relationship. Super mega important. But let's talk about these two types. Let's talk about the interaction styles. The ENFP is a starter type. It is informative, initiating movement. Informative means they beat around the bush. They're not exactly direct about things. They say things but may mean something else. Context is king with ENFPs. It's very interesting. They're also very initiating, and because they go to other people, they start things up with other people, which makes them extroverted, right? So anyway, and then they're very movement oriented. Well, both types are movement. Both types are all about fast movement. It's all about having that master process to be able to complete tasks, and they use the same process over and over and are trying to develop the master process to complete whatever task. Whereas a control type actually has to have its own individual process per task. That's why it takes them longer to complete tasks, etc. And if you haven't watched season 10, episode 8, the season finale of season 10, where I'm talking about how INTPs compare to INFPs, I actually dive really deep into that concept, and you can find out more there. So their interaction styles, so that makes the ENFP a starter, and they have a hard time finishing what they start. Well, thank God for INFJs, because they're finishers, direct responding movement, and they finish what the ENFP starts. Super mega important, right? It's absolutely important because they finish those things, and then they could take those things beyond that, right? Absolutely critical. Absolutely important. And that's why when Jesus, who an INFJ, could say, I am the fulfillment of the law, because the finisher, the INFJ, fulfills things. It's all about fulfillment. That's what it's all about. Fulfillment is everything. They finish things that the ENFPs start, right? That's why INFJs put so much energy in the end of things, but they have a hard time starting things. That's why the ENFP puts so much energy into starting things, but they have a hard time finishing things. However, when you bring them together, well, magic happens. Now again, don't forget, like for example, ENPs with INJs, that still can happen from interaction style. Imagine an ENTP with an INFJ relationship, which is definitely a relationship I highly recommend. Super high mega sexual compatibility, ideal sexual compatibility, really lacks in emotional compatibility, but they can make up that emotional compatibility through communication and through maturity and through human nurture, so that relationship can actually be a very valuable relationship. You can even go further. Imagine like ENTP, ENFJ relationship. relationship. Again, communication is key and can definitely go even further. It's absolutely required for communication. But then again, communication is required for any and every relationship anyway. It's just with the golden pair, it's the path to least resistance. Okay, so imagine if you had super low compatibility, like what socionics teaches, aka duality, where you have, for example, an INFJ with an ESTP or an ENFP with an ISTJ. And it's like they're going up this hill and they're trying to climb up this hill. And it's like, oh, this is so hard. This is so hard. This is so hard. This is so hard. But then you have the golden pair and they're basically standing on two opposite hills and they're going downhill. And, oh, this is really easy. This is really easy. This is really easy. And then they meet at the bottom. Okay. That's the power of the golden pair, folks. It is like breathing. It is like breathing air. It is absolutely incredible what can be accomplished in the context of golden pair. If a person's human nature is matching and also their human nurture in some capacity, and even if their nurture doesn't match, eventually the nature will settle out the nurture, provided there's communication and forgiveness and grace, etc. And then eventually they'll reach that point, and that's fantastic. Great. Good on them for having such an amazing relationship. That would be dope, right? It is the dopest. The golden pairs are the dopest. Trust me, they are the dopest. Are also extremely difficult and can be extremely volatile, right? Because like I said, you have both types, right? And then it's going to get super high highs, super low lows, and it's just going to be crazy. But then eventually, through communication and time, they have equilibrium. And then they go moving forward, and it becomes a fantastic relationship. I mean, who wouldn't want that, right? Who wouldn't want that? Well, understand that. You know, like, now, these two types, while they have different interaction styles, they have the same temperament. Both these types are idealists, and because they're idealists, they are seeking the ideal and going after the ideal. This is why ENFPs fall in love with the perfections that they find in other people. The perfections. Okay, it's kind of an interesting standpoint or point of view, because INFJs, they're all about perfection. They're trying to be perfect as much as possible. They want to appear as flawless as possible. However, the ENFP comes by and they look at those INFJs and it's like, wow, you're really flawed. You're a very flawed person, but there are parts about you, pieces about you that I find absolutely perfect. And it's those things that the ENFP can really just like divide and conquer and understand, you know, wow, as I gain an understanding of this INFJ, I really can see parts of them that are absolutely perfect, and they fall in love with those perfections that they're able to find in the INFJ, even though the INFJ is going out of their way to hide as many of their imperfections as much as possible. We see this all the time with INFJs. Like, they take photos of themselves, they take selfies, they post on social media, but they're almost always photoshopped or airbrushed. I mean, some INFJs don't do that, and I get it, but the more immature ones actually do, because they're afraid that they're going to come off with their SE inferior. They're afraid that people are going to get a bad experience from them. They're afraid that they're not going to be performing well because they see life as this big performance, and hey, I'm here to give other people a good experience. I want them to have as good of an experience as possible. But then it's kind of like they cheat in that way because they're not actually being absolutely real. It's actually a form of fake. Kind of interesting how that works, because, you know, ENFPs can also be just as accused of being just as fake as INFJs. Kind of interesting how that works. Maybe, like, you know, they were made for each other. You know what I'm saying? It always has that like base level manipulation. And in the words of my INFJ mentor, he said, quote, "I wish someone would manipulate me. I think that's pretty endearing." And it's kind of funny how that works. But yes, INFJs deep down seem to have this desire to be manipulated. And guess what? The ENFPs will certainly oblige. But folks, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to state to you right now that that is an unhealthy behavior. It's actually something that is pretty useful. Actually, it is really useful, and you'll find out why in a few minutes, because we're actually going to be talking about that a little bit more. So, but again, temperaments, they're both idealists. They're both focused on doing the right thing. They're both abstract, but they're very interest-based. They know what they're getting out of something. They know what somebody else is getting out of something, and it kind of allows them to gain the system, because they're not really following a system of doing things, and instead, they're just trying to figure out who wants what, etc. It is very interesting, and ENFPs are that way. That's why you got to watch out for the fine print, but at the same time, INFJs are that way too, because then they can have that covert contract of, hey, if I help you, you better help me, because that's the interest. That's why I'm even helping you to begin with, which can happen with INFJs, especially INFJs who are corrupt. So talking about that, let's look at their virtues and their vices. So the virtue and vice of the INFJ is integrity versus corruption. And the reason why they get corrupt is because INFJs are mirrors, and they mirror other people, and they mirror people around them. This is why I tell INFJs, get the losers out of your life, because you're mirroring wrong people, and because you're mirroring wrong people, you become corrupt. You become corrupt, and then that integrity that you're supposed to be displaying, that integrity that's supposed to be your virtue, that really sets you apart as the leader of our race, as the one person who is responsible for saving our race, giving our race a future, executing the vision, and bringing our race to the next stage of mental, spiritual, even bodily evolution for our race, to give our race a better tomorrow, right? Then they do this through their integrity. Well, they're not going to be integral if they're constantly being corrupted by corrupt people or bad people or people around them, because they become the people that they are around. It's really frustrating. They do this like I was actually talking to an INFJ yesterday. His name was Tyler. Really great guy. Never even met him before. It's the first time I met him. And he started asking me a bunch of questions about myself. And honestly, I was trying to avoid speaking to him about type. But I knew he was an INFJ. And then he just kept on pressing me with all these questions about who are you? What do you talk about? I know you're different from other people. I could tell you're different. What is it? And honestly, I just I'm like, fine, you know what? Screw it. I'm going all in. And I broke him. I literally broke him. And I said, listen, you're supposed to be this amazing person. You are supposed to be this most useful person to our race. You are supposed to be out there improving other people and making them stronger. The problem is you surround yourself with weak people, and then you stop growing because you're so focused on growing them, but they're so corrupted that you become corrupt as well, because you're too afraid and too insecure to surround yourself with people who are better than you, because you feel that you don't measure up to them. And it's no wonder you're growing. It's no wonder you're improving, because you're mirroring the losers instead of the people who are not losers. You should be mirroring the winners, right? When I said that, tears, right? Because he knew it was true. That's the power of virtue and vice for the INFJ. Well, with the ENFP, it's charity. Charity is their virtue, versus having the highest level of selfishness possible, for their vice. It's a problem. They become so depraved. It's charity versus depravity. And ENFPs, they are, quite frankly, the most selfish of all the types. They can be, because of that depravity. Because, they want to be that person laying down, having a good time. They're being fanned, and they're eating grapes. They're having grapes fed to them. It's, and they're like, oh, I'm so great. I have such a glowing personality. Everybody loves me. Everyone thinks so highly of me. That's how depraved they can get. And it's like the emperor's new clothes. They don't even realize. They don't even understand their folly, right? Well, I wish an INFJ would come in and breathe some fire on them, the fire of truth, such that they would actually change and realize what their purpose is, right? So come on, ENFPs, don't be depraved. But here's the thing. When you pair up an ENFP with an INFJ, do you know what happens? Do you know what kind of magic actually happens? Oh, it's so amazing. Guess what naturally happens? The ENFP learns how to be more charitable, because they're constantly being criticized by the INFJ. And guess what? The INFJ ends up becoming less corrupt and actually more integral, and they end up having integrity because the ENFP is challenging them, constantly challenging them on being a better person, on being a more moral person, holding that INFJ to a higher standard. And then as a result of this, the level of self-improvement that these two types, when they're in a golden pair with each other, are able to reach the highest heights, and a lot faster than any of the other types. The level of self-improvement is amazing. Here's a great example. Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is in a golden pair with his INFJ wife. And think about it. Ever since that they've been together, they've both become better people in almost every single way, because there's that consistent challenge. That consistent challenge of TI child to TE child, or the consistent challenge of FI parent to FE parent. And that really translates into the lower functions. We see it all the time. FI parent challenges FE parent, which gets FI critic to wake up because they're in cognitive orbit with each other. I realize we haven't talked about cognitive orbit, but it is coming. It's in season 18. It's coming around the corner. Thank you for your patience. Because these two functions are attached, and as much as the axes also attach functions as well. They can orbit each other, but they're also turn on an axis with each other. Very, very different way of doing things, right? So when it comes to this relationship, you just have to understand they really get to a point where they get so close to each other and challenge each other in such a healthy way that their virtues end up coming out and their vices end up getting burned away by truth, right? And it is an amazing experience. This is an amazing thing. And then this relationship becomes a beacon of light for the rest of humanity to follow. Literally a trailblazing experience, such that the INFJ finally has everything it needs to perform its task, which is to trailblaze a path forward for the rest of humanity to follow, in as much as Jesus Christ did, as he knew his path forward, as he's sitting there in Gethsemane, the Garden of Gethsemane, and is like, hey, I don't really want to do this, but it's not my will, it's your will. He's talking to his Father, right? God, and in prayer, it's not my will, it's your will be done. Will you take this cup for me? No, I'm actually going to move forward anyway. I will have the willpower. I will do what I am to do. I will perform this task because I want to. And he willingly went to the cross, was nailed to the cross, and shed his blood. And there you have it. There's the rest of the story. And the INFJ was able to do that because there was no corruption, because he had that virtue of integrity, the highest integrity. And he is the example of that integrity, the example of that virtue. There's a lot more to that story, and we're going to kind of be getting to it. By the way, disclaimer, I'm not trying to be religious, but I will be talking a lot about biblical concepts within this particular lecture. I don't care about church. I don't care about organized religion. I don't care about any of church doctrine or any of that. And as far as I'm concerned, burn it all. Burn it all. Like Aerys Targaryen mode, burn them all. Get the wildfire. You know what I'm saying? I really could care less. Let me tell you what I do care about, folks. It's telling the truth. That's what I really care about. And Jesus is the INFJ. He is the standard of INFJs out there. So you better believe I'm going to talk about him. I'm also going to talk about the ENFP that was closest to him. Oh yeah, that's going to be good. Just wait till I talk about that, right? Anyway, virtue and vice. The ENFP is able also, because of the integrity of the INFJ, to become the most giving person, the most charitable person out there. Charity is everything. And charity, they're so giving and they have such high frequency of giving that they end up developing this amazing reputation for being so giving. It's super important. Why do you think that the Prophet Muhammad talks about charity all the time? Did you folks know that the Prophet Muhammad was an ENFP? Interesting how that works. I don't know, if some of you have or have not studied the Quran, but the Quran is very clear about charity, and there's a reason why. It's because the person who wrote the Quran is an ENFP. Think about that for a second, right? Literally, think about that. So, anyway. We already talked about the cognitive functions and how they match together. The INFJ has this unrelenting passion for the ENFP, and it makes the ENFP always feel wanted. Super mega important that the ENFP always feels wanted. And the ENFP always feels good around the INFJ because the INFJ is so caring and seeks to make the FI parent feel good about itself and makes it feel valued. But because of that, the ENFP is able to give sympathy to the INFJ. I don't know how many times I've seen INFJs out there looking for sympathy, looking for someone to finally understand them and actually be sympathetic towards them, towards their cause, towards their calling. The calling of making other people with their ESTP subconscious to develop that wolf pack, kind of like, how Jesus did with the disciples, and make those disciples stronger. Well, it's all because of the sympathy provided by the ENFP. And then guess what? It allows the INFJ to become more empathetic and show empathy towards others. How many times did Jesus, as the INFJ, heal other people in the Gospels? How many times? It's a lot. There's a lot of healings going on, people. Think about that. through his empathy. And that was made possible by FI, sympathy. Sympathy is an engine that creates empathy. Super important. And then the ENFP's opinions and their beliefs, which is their TE child, are verified by the fire of TI child, where the TI child, which is like a double-edged sword, because as it cuts people, it's also cutting the person that's wielding the sword of TI truth. Because I could talk to you folks here every single day with my TI parent, but guess what? Every truth that I speak, I'm a hypocrite, because it all applies to me too. It doesn't just apply to all of you, it applies to me. And if I'm not living by the truth that I speak, that makes me a hypocrite. See, at least Jesus wasn't a hypocrite. I am, though. It's funny. A lot of people in this audience compare me to Jesus on a regular basis. I'm not Jesus. I'm not God. I'm not worthy of that. I am a hypocrite. I am a man. I am limited. I am flawed beyond measure. Probably worthy of the fire. But the point is like, worthy of the fire of truth, if you think about it. TI child will have its day in court with me, and I have no choice but to listen to it because its judgment is just, if you think about it. And then SI inferior. The INFJ is able to create loyalty in the SI inferior, and the SI inferior becomes so comfortable and is enjoying the good experiences, the consistent good experiences coming from the INFJ, especially from a sexual point of view, that ENFP becomes diehard loyal to the INFJ, such that ENFP will follow that INFJ over a cliff at the drop of a hat, because they have so much faith built up in that INFJ. It's kind of interesting how Jesus is telling everyone, hey, you need to have faith. No wonder, because the ENFP is built for building up faith as a result of SE inferior's influence on SI inferior. So when SI inferior becomes SI aspirational, it's all as a result of faith. Faith is everything, folks. I'll explain why in a few minutes. Faith is everything, especially from a sexual point of view. Did you know that because of the, SE inferior is trying to make SI inferior stronger and expand its horizons, especially in a sexual way? Did you know that the Chinese word for sex actually directly translates into the word flowery combat? It's literally combat. They're doing combat with each other. This ESTP is going after that ISTJ subconscious, and it's like, oh yeah, it's no different for this relationship. That same sexual interaction could happen because we have ESTP subconscious and ISTJ subconscious in the same golden pair. Interesting how that works, right? Similar sexual habits start developing between all of the types. Some primary, some secondary, but it still happens. At the end of the day, it's flowery combat, okay? And let me tell you that ENFP is like, oh, love the sensation so much. And the INFJ just continues to marvel over and over and over how like every little touch, every little caress is like little lightning strikes all over their ENFP lover, and how that ENFP just reacts to every single thing the INFJ does. See what I'm saying, folks? Like that's literally what happens, okay? That's literally how sexuality works within this golden pair. That's why, come on, ENFPs are typically on bottom and or ENPs are typically on bottom and INJs are typically on top. That's just how it works. Because, that ESTP subconscious, because it's the anima, is supposed to be a little bit more manly, right? So when people have sex, they have sex with their subconscious, and they have sex with their subconscious. So guess what? Your subconscious, ESTP male, for those INFJs out there, gets that ISTJ female subconscious out there, right? Because, it's the opposing gender. If the ENFP is the male in this relationship, that is, and the INFJ is the female in this relationship. So I guess that would mean the INFJ female would take a more masculine role. How does that work? Well, yes, that's a thing. It's a thing. That's how sex works in this relationship, folks. That's literally how it works, okay? So it's not a bad thing. Stop having these preconceived notions about how sex works. And guys, in this particular golden pair, I really, really have to stress this. Both of these types, the ENFP and the INFJ, because of your temperaments, because you're both idealists and you're trying to seek the ideal from a sexual point of view, guess what? You're always trying to do the right thing in the bedroom, and some things would be more socially acceptable than others. Stop allowing third-party information. You affiliative, authoritative people, stop it. So focus on doing the right thing that you guys end up limiting yourselves in the bedroom. You limit yourselves sexually based on your preconceived notions, and this is especially almost always with the ENFP, because of how I'm not comfortable with doing that in the bedroom, which limits the choice of hero INFJ in the bedroom, which you should never do, ENFPs. Just realize that the INFJ is built to being one of the most, if not the most gentle of all the types, in as much as the INTJ is, because they have SE inferior, which makes them the most gentle, which makes them the most trustworthy, the most comfortable, the most comforting in the bedroom. Maybe you should allow them to have freedom of choice to do with you as they please. Stop relying on your preconceived notions about what sex should be like. You know, all that pornography that you guys have been looking at, ENFPs typically almost always have this insane pornographic problem. It's so bad. It's really bad with NPs especially. I think NPs out of all the types have the worst pornography addictions out there. And then because you're affiliative, NFPs have it even worse because they end up having these preconceived notions as to what sex is supposed to look like, which ends up limiting their NJ lovers. It's horrible. Stop doing that, ENFPs. You're actually harming your partners. You're harming your relationship. How about you trust them? How about you allow your INFJ to have absolute freedom of choice in the bedroom such that they can do with you as they will? And you tell them, no holds barred. You see what I'm saying? Do not limit your INFJ. Give hero as much freedom as possible in the bedroom. And I guarantee you, ENFPs, you'll have the best sexual experience you've ever had forever and ever and ever, such that you always know that the grass is never greener elsewhere, such that as a result, your INFJ lover, especially when it comes to anything sexual, which is so important to SE inferior, they know that you will never abandon them because only they can deliver what it is you desire. INFJs are so afraid, ENFPs, of you abandoning them because it's like as if you could get a better sexual experience elsewhere. They're so afraid of that. Do not do that to them. And if that's the case, if you end up leaving your INFJ for a better sexual experience elsewhere, guess what? Because you're affiliative and trying to do the right thing and having all these preconceived notions, it's possibly you that was inhibiting your INFJ to begin with, limiting their choice, limiting their freedom in the bedroom such that they could not deliver that experience in the first place, and you just created a self-fulfilling prophecy that caused you to abandon them, and it's your own damn fault to begin with. I've seen this so many times with ENFPs and INFJ relationship golden bears. I have to consistently coach people out of this because I'm affiliative and we have to do the right thing in the bedroom because, I'm like this super Christian or I'm this Catholic, and there's stop with your religious bullshit. I don't care. Sexuality is about you and your lover and nobody else. It is 100% negotiable. You need to learn how to communicate and stop trying to do the right thing. Realize that what you think in quotes is the right thing is actually the wrong thing, because the right thing, the real right thing, is you having your own sexual experience, your own sexual rules, your own sexual way of doing things with your INFJ lover, folks. INFJs understand that this is the truth. Understand that if your ENFP has these preconceived notions, it is your job to use your TI child to break them of that. Criticize them. Do not let them get away with that. Do not. I am so tired of INFJs, especially INFJ women, being so sexually unfulfilled because their ENFP men are being literal pussies because, this is not the right thing. I'm not comfortable because it's not the right thing. When the reality is they need to give their INFJ women full freedom to do with them as they will. Even I and ENTP have had similar struggles in that way because I had similar issues there because I have SI inferior too. I'm guilty of it too. # Chase is a hypocrite. I've done it. But I never will do that again, ever. I will never, ever, ever, I promise, ever limit an hero ever again. because I will trust her. Because if I'm willing to be intimate with her, she will have full freedom of choice forever and ever, and I will not live in her. I remember the day I made that decision, and it was great. Trust me, ENFPs, when I tell this to you, it's worth it. Don't be afraid. INFJs, don't be afraid of them abandoning you. Please don't be afraid of your ENFP abandoning you, because that can create a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. Because if you're afraid of abandonment, you're going to start making decisions and jumping to conclusions and accusing the ENFP of cheating on you when they weren't actually cheating on you. And then it's because, well, if I'm going to do the time, I may as well do the crime because I'm an NP. And, well, if you think that I'm just going to cheat on you anyway, fine, I'm just going to go cheat on you because that's what you think I'm going to do anyway, because you're treating me as if I am cheating on you when reality is I'm not. So why do I want to be in this relationship? Maybe the grass is really greener elsewhere. INFJs, stop with the self-fulfilling prophecy already. Both of you types have this issue. Get over your affiliative bullshit and start communicating, because the right thing to do is to communicate. The right thing to do is to negotiate. Everything in the bedroom is negotiable. Everything is to be decided by both of you, so please do it. For God's sake, please do it. Stop doing this to each other. Stop. Your nurtures are adversely affecting your natures, because your nurtures are trying to dictate to you how the affiliative do the right thing rules, sexual rules should go in the bedroom. It's as if a third party who's not even in your relationship is dictating to you how your sexual relationship should actually occur. And I'm tired of it. Stop doing it. Seriously, stop. More on SE inferior. Remember, they're afraid of you abandoning them. Demonstrate loyalty to them consistently, ENFPs. It is your job to demonstrate loyalty. You have to demonstrate loyalty to SI inferior. Take photos of what you're doing and send it to your INFJ. Seriously, they want to have that shared experience, because if they know that you're sharing experiences with them, it demonstrates to them that you're loyal to them. Anytime I'm in a relationship with an INJ, I literally snap photos with my phone as to what I'm doing during the day, and I text it to her to show her what I'm doing so that she can, it's as if she is there with me and sharing in the experience with me. And it's one of the ways that I demonstrate loyalty to her, that my SI inferior dutifully demonstrates loyalty to my INJ. Super mega important that you understand this, ENFPs, and then because of that, they will see that you are being loyal to them with their SE inferior. They won't feel like they're abandoned. Their any nemesis will stop jumping to the wrong conclusions. It is your duty to do this, ENFPs. It is your duty to do this. You want to have a good relationship? That's how. Because remember, INFJs they literally desire, they literally want to give you the best experience with their SE inferior to your SI inferior that you've ever had in your life, so that it is literally impossible for you to forget that INFJ so long as you live. Literally impossible. They want your soul permanently etched with the memories that they have given you. And trust me, it is a thing. I have SI inferior. I've been in relationships, sexual relationships with SE inferiors. Yeah, you don't forget that stuff. They try really hard. And I so admire them for it. I so admire the artistic and amazing skill of NI Hero SE inferior, especially in the bedroom. It is absolutely incredible. And yet, the INFJs are so afraid that they're so bad. They're so afraid that they perform so poorly in the bedroom. When the reality situation is, they don't. They're actually the best of them all. Funny how that works. It's called Dunning-Kruger effect, Dunning-Kruger syndrome. The smart think they're dumb, and the dumb think they're smart. And Dunning-Kruger syndrome applies to these two types more than anyone else. I don't know how many not smart ENFPs have been out there thinking they're smart when the reality is they're dumb. I don't know how many INFJs out there I've known who are absolutely brilliant, like, my INFJ mentor, who literally thinks that he's not good enough, he's not worthy enough, he's not smart enough, yet he's brilliant. Stop with the Dunning-Kruger stuff. They even take it to a sexual level. Oh my gosh, stop with Dunning-Kruger, please, both you guys. Stop. Realize who you are. Have humility. Humility is not about valuing yourself less. It's not about valuing yourself too much. It's about valuing yourself the right way, in the middle. Not too high, not too low. The ENFP, they value themselves too high and it comes out in pride. The INFJ, they value themselves too low. Interesting how it works. And then they get emo. Yeah, that sucks. Stop doing that. Don't forget, INFJs, they feel so worthless every single day because they're FI critic. They walk around feeling like they're bad people, they're worthless, they're useless, and all they want to do is become the most useful person for you, ENFPs, so you never abandon them because they're so afraid of being abandoned. They never want to be abandoned. Never abandon an INFJ or an INTJ. Never abandon them. Don't abandon them. Sometimes their anti-nemesis goes off and they perceive that you're abandoning them when in reality the situation is you're not. But they're so sensitive in that area, they can easily imagine you abandoning them. And then they start jumping to conclusions and making wrong decisions. When all you had to do was at least be consistent in demonstrating loyalty to them. I'm not saying it makes it right for the INFJ. I'm not saying that, ENFPs. I'm not saying that. But you can actually you have the power to prevent these issues by having consistent shared experiences with the INFJ, with your INFJ lover. You can. It's absolutely important. And here's the thing, because of how sympathetic you are, as long as you just react positively to every little thing the INFJ does, and you give them recognition, you give them appreciation, right? You give them recognition, and you give them appreciation, guess what happens? Guess what happens? Well, they feel amazing. They no longer feel worthless anymore. Wow. They no longer feel worthless anymore. They feel useful because at least at a minimum, somebody out there appreciates them for what they do for them, that somebody out there gives them recognition. They are at least useful to somebody for once. INFJ women, sometimes they have children and they actually, gather their identity from children. They really gather their identity from children, and that's a problem. That having the title mother to them means everything to them because at least they're useful to those children, right? But how much more important is it that the INFJ woman feels so much more useful to their ENFP man in life? That would be nice. ENFPs, if you are men or women, if you are not giving recognition to your INFJ, what the hell are you doing? Are you arrogant? Are you that selfish? Are you that depraved? Wake up. People just don't do that, and they go out of their way to help you. Show them some recognition, give them some credit where it's due. I know that you're all about credit. You need that credit, TE child, so that you can feel good about yourself. Credit so that all those people out there think so highly of you. Would you at least, while you're up there, on your throne, at least have mercy on the INFJ and, grant them a ray of light? Thank them. Because let me tell you something, ENFPs, you would be nothing without them. And as much as INFJs could be nothing without you. You build upon each other. You really are on a team, an interdependent team. You are affiliative, right? Interdependence, right? This is who you are. This is what you can do. Understand something. Why am I saying this? Understand something. The INFJ is endeavoring in every single area of their life, endeavoring to become absolutely irreplaceable. They want to be irreplaceable. They want to be irreplaceable in your eyes. Let me tell you something, folks. The INFJ is irreplaceable. They really are. As much as an INTJ would be irreplaceable. Because they are irreplaceable, because no one goes as far as they do. No one lets go like they do. And I hear it was so powerful, it doesn't let go. It can find its way through every obstacle and get everywhere. And even if your heart hardens, ENFPs, that INFJ will find a way, and I hear it will find a way to get to your heart. And it doesn't give up. INFJs, they never give up, and they are on a journey to being irreplaceable. Allow them to be irreplaceable. Stop holding them in such a low position. ENFPs, recognize how your INFJ goes out of their way to be irreplaceable. Appreciate them. Love them for it. Don't do this to them. Be loyal to them. Be consistent to them. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. And deep down, they know they don't deserve it, but they love you so much that they'd be willing to allow that. all for the sake of your selfishness and your depravity. Don't do this. Please stop. Stop hurting them. We need these people. We need these people to value themselves, because if they value themselves and they have that integrity, do you know what happens? They become more like Jesus. And do you know what happens when they become more like Jesus? Then guess what? Our race has a future. But no. In the book of James, chapter 4, it says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Does it not come as a result of the desires that do battle within you? You kill and you covet, but you cannot have what you want. And you do not have because you do not ask God. But when you ask God, you do not receive, because you do it with the wrong motives." ENFPs. That you will get what you spend on your own pleasures. Wow. Don't do that to your INFJs, ENFPs. Don't do that. INFJs, criticize your ENFPs. Hold them accountable. They're supposed to be holding you accountable and keeping you away from the corruption. You need to keep them away from depravity. You need to keep them charitable and giving. The INFJ is on the journey to become irreplaceable, because they understand that they are the cornerstone, the most important piece of the architecture that completes the project, or at least sets the foundation of a project in such a way that allows the project to be a success, the project that is humanity itself. And that's part 1 of this lecture. Let's begin with part 2, shall we? In the last lecture, season 14, episode 7, we talked about how the INTJ-ENTP relationship is the engine of creation, and where it is literally the battle for reality itself. Well, let me tell you something about this golden pair. This golden pair, the ENFP-INFJ relationship, it's actually the engine of hope. And it's all about the battle for the soul of humanity. This relationship is the battle for the soul of humanity. And if you ENFPs can't let go of your depravity, if you cannot let go of it and become charitable, and if you INFJs can't let go of your corruption and get the losers out of your life and start mirroring people who are starring with you and stop being afraid and stop being pussies to do it and just actually do it, and then you will become and have integrity. My gosh, you know what happens? You literally create an engine of hope. Hope that literally saves all of mankind and gives us a bright future. Maybe that one utopia that you NFs, that you idealists talk about could actually happen. If first you could actually create a utopia within your own golden pair relationships instead of succumbing to the depravity and the corruption, that would be nice. Maybe if you led by example with your relationships, we might actually get somewhere as a race. You're supposed to be that beacon of light, are you not? Gosh, I'm such a hypocrite as I talk about this. Oh. And now the true purpose of the ENFP. ENFPs, I know I'm so hard on you, but it's for a reason, because you allow things to get to your head so fast, faster than anybody else. You allow things to go to your head so quickly. INFJs too. INFJs end up developing this God complex because of their TE child. This God complex, where they literally think having sex with somebody would heal them emotionally or whatever, or this insanity thing. I don't know how many times I have met INFJs with a God complex, and they get so cocky. Oh my gosh, it's just such cancer. Stop doing it, INFJs. But it doesn't stop there. ENFPs, oh my gosh, you guys can become so arrogant. So arrogant. Everyone thinks so highly of you. You become so selfish. It's so wrong. It's so wrong. Let me tell you what you're supposed to be. Let me tell you. The ENFP archetype is known as the advocate, right? What does it advocate for? What is it supposed to do, right? Let me tell you something. You're supposed to be an advocate for truth. That's what you're supposed to be, an advocate for truth. That is your real purpose. And we're going to talk about how important that is. INFJs, you're supposed to be the avatar of truth, literal truth incarnate, absolute truth incarnate. You are supposed to be so close in relationship to the concept known as absolute truth, in as much as you ENFPs are supposed to be the avatar of the absolute good. Yes, we know absolute truth exists. It absolutely exists. You know why? Because think about it. If you were to come up to tell me and say, hey, absolute truth does not exist, I would ask in response, okay, is that a true statement? And then you'd say, well, yeah, it is a true statement. I'm like, okay, the fact that you say that absolute truth does not exist equals a true statement invalidates that entire argument, logically speaking. Therefore, based on logic alone, absolute truth does exist. And let me tell you, folks, if absolute truth exists, then so also absolute good does exist. And of course, logically speaking, that means absolute lies and deceit, and then absolute false, basically absolute falsehood, and then absolute evil could also exist. Understand, ENFPs, that when you are in your virtue, you are closer to absolute good. When you are in your vice, you are closer to absolute evil. Let me tell you something, INFJs, when you're close to your virtue of integrity, you are closer to absolute truth and being the avatar of absolute truth. Jesus was. No wonder he would say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. He literally said that. He's telling the truth, absolute truth, the avatar of absolute truth, the one that walked this planet who could actually make that claim. Wow. He resurrected the dead. That's pretty dope. And he conquered death himself. Interesting. And then people could make the argument, oh, interesting. I literally had the world's foremost expert on creation and evolution on both things. He can argue and debate both sides easily. He literally runs the evolution subreddit and the creation subreddit. He literally runs both of them. He's a good guy. His name's Eric. A fantastic individual with his research and his knowledge on that subject. And he literally told me, you know what, Chase? There is more evidence for the resurrection of Jesus than there is evolution. And I'm like, wow, okay, if the expert in evolution, the world's foremost expert in evolution is saying that, that's unbelievable to me. Interesting. Anyway, I'm not trying to posit churchianity on you or creationism. That's not the point, folks. I'm just using these biblical concepts to demonstrate a point to you, okay? That the archetype of the INFJ is literally how Jesus walks his life and his ministry or whatever he did in the Gospels, okay? It's literally the same thing, okay? And as an avatar of truth, so also could any INFJ become that avatar of truth such that it changes the world. Oh, wait, didn't Gandhi do that? Wasn't he an INFJ, for example? Think about these things. Think about these things, folks. Think about them, okay? This is the battle for the soul of humanity. And ENFPs are supposed to be, they're really supposed to be that advocate for truth. ENFPs, you're supposed to be that truth seeker with your T child. Why else do I tell you folks to read over and over and over? Find that truth. Seek and find that truth and bring it to the INFJ. They already know the truth and they will verify your beliefs. They will verify your opinions. And then as a result of that, they will come to know even more. And they will come to know an even higher truth than before and get closer to becoming that avatar of absolute truth that walks the earth. That absolute truth that is necessary for saving humanity, while you, ENFPs, advocate for what's true. Instead of putting your heads in the sand like so many STJs and so many NFPs actually do, you, ENFPs, have a much higher responsibility out of all of the types as seekers of truth to make sure that your heads are not in the sand, to make sure that you are not ignorant. Because let me tell you something, ENFPs, with you being selfish and focusing on, spending those things on your own pleasures, like in James chapter 4. If you weren't spending so much time spending things being depraved and focusing on spending things on your own pleasures, maybe, the world might be a better place. Maybe you'd be advocating for the truth. So necessary. So necessary for the INFJ in order to be on its path for truth, in order to save and give the future a better future for humanity as we know it. You need to be there reading every single day and discovering and finding what the truth is and bringing it to them, talking about it with them, challenging them, opening yourself to the flames of truth, their sword of truth, their TI child, that double-edged sword, that double-edged flaming sword that protects the entrance to the Garden of Eden, right? Double-edged flaming sword, the sword of truth, absolute truth. Funny how that works. What is truth? Truth is literally hellfire, folks. It is literally hellfire. When people, there's this old story, you know, when someone goes to hell and then the demons are torturing them, etc. And it's like, oh, you're torturing me. And then all of a sudden they realize, no, the demons are saving them. They're actually angels who are trying to burn the lies away. Because there's a lot of lies when it comes to ENFPs. Because remember, in the absence of communication or explanation, perception becomes reality. TE child, TI trickster does not really know what the truth is. It finds the truth, it collects the truth, but only the TI child really knows what the truth is. And that TI child cuts through the bullshit so that both types can know the truth. And then because the ENFP at last knows the truth, they can advocate for the truth and advocate for a better tomorrow with a new core interpersonal philosophy, not just for their own personal selves, but to be shared with everybody else. Wow. Truth alienates. When you're the avatar of absolute truth, it alienates people. INFJs alienate people because of their TI child. They're always alone. Healthy ones. Healthy INFJs are alone because when they're not alone, they're usually with losers. And those losers corrupt them and make them into horrible people, and then they're no longer the avatar of absolute truth. Instead, they're losers. They're worthless. They're useless. But the useful ones, they're alone because when they speak the truth, just alienates everyone. Why do you think that Jesus was nailed to a cross? Why do you think that the Jews wanted to kill him? Because he was telling the truth and calling them out on their system. You know, they literally had their own version of the Federal Reserve at the steps of the temple doing money changing, right? And money changing against their people. And Jesus was calling them out, calling out the Pharisees and the teachers of the law and the Sanhedrin about, oh, you guys are all fucked up. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that to people and taking advantage of the poor like that with your little Federal Reserve money changing system. Kind of interesting how we have one of those nowadays. Wow. But that's what Jesus was doing. And you know what? He was getting in on their profits. So then they conspired to murder him, and they succeeded. Wow. Wow. Guess what? That's what INFJs end up experiencing because they have no choice but to tell the truth. But who out there has the strength to hear it? Why else does Jesus say, he who has an ear, let him hear? That's what I say. He who has an ear, let him hear. He who is willing to hear the truth, then listen to the truth. No wonder INFJ's TI child, especially in the context of the golden pair, always need to be listened to. TI users must be listened to. You may feel, ENFPs, that your TI child of an INFJ lover is actually incorrect in what they're saying. You may feel that way, but you still have to listen to what they say. They always need to be listened to. If you are in a relationship with an INFJ, folks, you need to listen to them. I don't care if you feel they're wrong. You need to listen to them. Listen to your INFJ. It is absolutely critical. Listen to them. Because if you don't listen to them, wow. So you're basically saying that you would rather hear a lie and just be told what you want to hear instead of being willing to do to listen to the truth. Truth hurts, I get it, folks, but without the pain of truth, you will never grow. Don't forget, life is not what is about what is good or bad. Life is not about what is true or false. Life is about what is wise and what is not. And in order for you to reach wisdom, you have to be willing to hear the truth and suffer for it. I cannot comfort you into wisdom, especially you ENFPs who don't like hearing the truth, because then you feel bad about yourself or you get uncomfortable and then you want to put your head in the sand or remain ignorant. You can't be ignorant, because if you're ignorant, you are literally destroying humanity. You're supposed to be the avatar of absolute good. You're supposed to understand that absolute good. I get that your TI trickster is like, well, anything could be true. Anything could be false. It's all about what you believe. It's about who believes what. No. And of course, my FI trickster, anything can be a good thing. Anything can be a bad thing. Wow. So subjective, mate. The truth leads to eternal loneliness for the INFJ. They are so lonely. How many times did Jesus tell the truth and he had to withdraw so that he would be gone 40 days in the desert to be tempted by the devil, to withdraw where he'd have to get away from all of his disciples and all of his entourage and go be alone in the hills or in the mountains or on a boat to pray and just get away from me, people, because he knew he was alienating people. Those who listened to him, he was very popular. They gave him a very huge procession when he came into the town, and they're singing Hosanna, Hosanna, and throwing all these palm leaves everywhere. Ooh, yeah, woohoo. And then they kill him shortly after that. Wow, the hypocrisy of humanity. Unbelievable. Because in the absence of communication or explanation, perceptions become reality. To have those witnesses stand there and give false testimony to Jesus just before he was tried and then eventually executed. Great. All because of, perception. And yet, if the ENFP was there to advocate, maybe it would have been different, don't you think? Because the truth alienates. This is why the INFJ, because they become so alone, they need the ENFP, because you are supposed to be truth's advocate. You are supposed to be there to advocate for the INFJ. Where was Jesus' advocate? Where was they? Where were they? You ENFPs need to realize that you are truth's advocate. Stop running away from the truth. Find it, seek it, hold it, master it. For the sake of the INFJ, advocate for them. When everyone out there is telling them that they're harsh, that they're evil people, when reality is they're just telling the truth, you're supposed to be there for them, ENFPs. You're supposed to protect them. You are supposed to tell people, you're perceiving this INFJ wrong. They're just telling you the truth. They're trying to help you. You're supposed to be there and do that for them. Why aren't you there, ENFPs? Why aren't you there? Is it because you're so depraved and selfish? Because maybe you're in on that little temple action, right? Maybe you're indirectly or directly making money off the people that this INFJ is getting in on your little scheme? Wow. Unbelievable. Don't do that. ENFPs fall in love with the perfections they find. INFJs, they feel so imperfect, they feel so worthless, they feel so useless. And then at last that FE parent sees that FI parent finding some perfections in the INFJ, and the INFJ realizes at last I have some value because somebody out there sees my value and someone out there is able to listen and hear the truth. Unbelievable. That's why. That's the whole point of it, folks. That's the whole point. ENFPs fall in love with the perfections they find. ENTPs fall in love with the flaws that they find. The INFJ endeavors to be flawless. They want to be perfect. They know they have all of this skill, all this capability wrapped up inside, but they've never been able to apply it because they've never been able to get that one big break or to get that one big chance, right? You ENFPs out there, you could promote them. You could get them on center stage. You could give them the opportunity to speak the truth. You have the power. You have this amazing Rolodex. You have all the connections. You know all the people. You could make it happen. But what do? You just want to lay there, being fanned away, being fed grapes, while your INFJ is just trying to tell the truth and actually help people. Wake up. Please wake up. Please wake up. Do you not understand, ENFPs? As important as the INFJ is, probably the most important of all the types, the INFJ can't do it without you. They cannot do this without you, which makes you important. Maybe just as important. The curse of the flawless definitely harms the INFJ. The INFJ is there. They are there to try to tell the truth for the sake of others. Yes, it could be negative or it could be positive, but it is all to have that hellfire of truth burning the lies away so that new life can grow instead. It is that kind of truth that is necessary for making the world better, necessary for saving humanity. But no one is going to listen to them unless you wake up and rise to the occasion, ENFPs, and advocate for them. You need to be an advocate for the truth. You need to be an advocate for the INFJ. You need to give them a path to start walking towards. You need to start the process to get people ready to listen to them. Otherwise, the world will not change. Otherwise, you will not get that utopia that you dream about. It'll never happen because you're either too selfish or you're too afraid to put your reputation on the line for the truth teller. That's what you need to be doing. Put your reputation on the line. Let me tell you something, INFJs. Everyone is imperfect. If you try so hard to be perfect, INFJs, it is alienating to other people. You end up getting this God complex. Wow, you end up becoming super cocky. Not even the ENFP can put up with it. You know, an ENFP with FI parents like, ooh, I have such a glowing personality and people love me because I'm just that awesome. And then all of a sudden they see you with a God complex walking around. They're like, whoa, I mean, I'm arrogant, but like that guy, oh, wow, unbelievable. Yeah, stop with the God complex. Let me tell you something, INFJs. Perfect diamonds, they're grown in a lab. They're worthless. Guess what? Perfection is worthless. You want to know why you feel worthless and useless all the time? Because you guys hold yourself to such a high moral standard that not even you yourselves can adhere to. And then when you expect other people to adhere with your FE parent, expect other people to adhere to that moral standard, they can't, and then you alienate them. No wonder you're alone. It's the curse of the flawless. Loneliness. That is not how you're supposed to be. Understand the value of the imperfections. Our race is imperfect. Our race is supposed to be imperfect, because that's what gives us value. Our imperfections is what gives our race value. A diamond, and I say it so many times, a diamond is flawed and it is the most precious substance on the planet. Of course, ENFPs are like, oh, that's only because De Beers and marketing and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, but it's also the hardest substance on the planet. The hardest, made of pure carbon. Human beings, we are made of carbon and we're flawed. And the diamond is so beautiful, so colorful. And it too is flawed. It was created through suffering, through heat and pressure. Just like human beings, good human beings are created through heat and pressure and pain of life. Recognize the value of your imperfections, INFJs. This is why I think it's either the Apostle Peter or the Apostle Paul says, I boast in my imperfections. Yeah, think about that. There is value in being imperfect. Guess what? This is where ENFPs come in. ENFPs, they see how imperfect you are, INFJs. This is what makes them so important. This is what makes ENFPs potentially one of the most important types of them all. Specifically because the most important type, the INFJ, can't get to where they're going without the ENFP to start the process in the first place, which makes the ENFP integral to the future of our race. ENFPs, get off your ass and wake up. You're so important. We don't get a future without you. Stop letting it go to your head. Have self-respect. Have some dignity. Recognize your responsibility. Recognize your duty, ENFPs. What your duty is. Find the perfection inside the imperfection. The INFJ is already very imperfect, and because of that, they don't feel that they are worthy enough to continue on to tell the truth that could save our race. And then comes the ENFP, who recognizes that truth that they speak, right? They recognize that truth. And it's like, okay, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to advocate for you. I know that I can find perfection amongst all of your imperfections. And then the ENFP falls in love with the INFJ because you do have some perfections about you. I see them clearly. And I'm not going anywhere. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak before the multitudes. Amazing. What does this mean? This means that when the ENFP falls in love with the INFJ, it is an act of forgiveness. because that ENFP can see those few perfections in that INFJ that are there. You know, it's like looking at the forest and not the trees. That's what the ENFP is for, folks. We give the ENFP so much crap for not being able to see into the trees or the weeds of the situation, but that T child could see the forest. And the ENFP says, well, we got some dead trees over here. The whole forest is still worth it to me. And that's how they see the INFJ. I understand that you feel worthless and useless. I get that. But overall, you're an awesome person. Overall, you're someone I can be loyal to. Overall, I will never abandon you. You are worth not being abandoned. You are worth being loved. They find the perfection in the imperfection. And the ENFP's love for the INFJ is literal, pure forgiveness. Forgiving the INFJ of those flaws, which then enables the INFJ to forgive others. Let me tell you something, folks. We as a race, we need forgiveness. And it starts with this golden pair. Our race is doomed without forgiveness. Why is it our race is constantly told to love our neighbor as ourselves, to love our enemies, to forgive each other, to forgive ourselves, and to forgive? It's so critical. And it is without this golden pair, that forgiveness will never take place. And then all of us, because we're unwilling to forgive each other, all of us will be held responsible. All of us will be held to the fire. But it is because of this golden pair that our race has a chance. Let me show you how. Because it's already happened in history. It's already happening. Guess what? When the INFJ is forgiven, they mirror. Remember, because they're a mirror, they mirror that forgiveness, and then they can at last forgive others. INFJs, out of all the types, folks, are the least forgiving of all the types. They are the least forgiving because that ISTJ demon, it is judge, jury, and executioner of all it surveys. And it is the least forgiving. That's why INFJs are the least forgiving of all the types. Interesting how that works. And yet, we look at Jesus Christ, an INFJ, and would say that he is the most forgiving. And he can be the most forgiving. Why? Because someone out there saw his value. Someone out there found the perfection, right? You know, potentially God the Father, potentially the Holy Spirit, or maybe it was someone else. Maybe. The ultimate truth is integrity. That is the ultimate truth. Because if you have integrity, you are walking by truth, not by sight. It's funny because oftentimes you see the ENFP walking by sight and not by truth. And then you see the INFJ walking by truth and not by sight, right? Walking by faith. How can they have faith? Well, they have faith because the ENFP SI inferior has faith in the INFJ. The ultimate truth is integrity. The ultimate good, folks, is love. The absolute truth is love. The absolute good is love. The absolute truth is integrity. Super important. The doom of humanity comes through the superego, and the superego is so unforgiving. How will we be forgiven? It happens when the superego itself is forgiven, and then because it had the SI experience of being forgiven, it can be finally at last become angelic instead of demonic, and then forgive everybody else. And it is no longer judge, jury, and executioner. And yet we know Jesus, through shedding his blood on the cross, according to the story, literally owns the human race. So he gets to decide our fate. He is the judge, jury, and executioner. And yet the advocate is there. The advocate is there to advocate for humanity on our behalf and to advocate to him in such a way where he will forgive us all. The engine of hope and the battle for the soul of humanity. Humanity is imperfect, but the advocate of truth, the ENFP, can find the perfections within the imperfect, and it does, and then it realizes, hey, humanity, while it's not perfect, I see some perfections in humanity. Please don't burn humanity. Please forgive humanity. And then because the INFJ knows that it was forgiven by the ENFP, then it can have forgiveness on the rest of us. That is your purpose, ENFPs. That is your value. That is why our race has a future, because of you. Recognize your responsibility. Recognize who you are. Recognize your purpose and why you exist. You need to forgive. Forgive the INFJs. Find the perfections amongst the imperfections. Do not destroy the forest for just a few failed trees. Have mercy on us. Advocate for us. That is your purpose. This actually happens. Talking more about biblical lore, the church actually believed, up until I think this is the 14th century, and don't quote me on that Mary Magdalene and Jesus were in a sexual relationship, or maybe even married. Now, I know that nowadays the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, they don't maintain that at all. But up until the 14th century, it was considered the norm. Mary Magdalene. Let me talk about Mary Magdalene. There's a part in the book of John, through biblical interpolation, through Catholic oral tradition, where the teachers and the Pharisees and the teachers of the law found Mary Magdalene literally screwing some guy as a prostitute. And I'm like, seriously, why are they like being like voyeuristic there? I mean, that's like pretty messed up. But they go in there. They go into this room, pull her off of this guy, drag her through the streets, and throw her at the feet of Jesus with stones in their hand, and they're literally going to execute her in front of Jesus. They're going to kill this woman in front of Jesus. And Jesus sees her, and they're getting ready to stone her. And then he bends down, writes something into the sand. Who knows what it is? Maybe it was the 10 Commandments. We don't know. Picks up a stone. He's got that stone, holding it right there, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then he looks at the Pharisees and says, all right, whichever one of you is without sin, you're the one who gets to cast the first stone. As he's holding a stone. And then the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they realize that they've been beat, and they drop their stones, and they walk away. Now, that story was added to the Gospel of John 600 years after it was written, so take it with many grains of salt, because that's biblical interpolation, but it is part of the Catholic oral tradition. Let me tell you something. Jesus had mercy on that woman, inasmuch as the INFJ has mercy on the ENFP for its depravity, such that the ENFP can find the perfections amongst the imperfections of the INFJ and provide forgiveness to the INFJ, so that the INFJ can mirror that forgiveness and forgive others. And Jesus, of course, he forgave Mary Magdalene, an ENFP. And what did Mary Magdalene do later? Story of Mary and Martha, right? Was not Mary Magdalene the woman who took that alabaster jar of perfume worth a year's wages, and she uses the whole contents of that jar on Jesus, right? And then the disciples gave her so much crap for that. And it could have been given away to charity, right? But she herself was performing an act of charity for her INFJ, Jesus, who, according to the church, was his lover. Kind of interesting if you read the story, and Jesus, who resurrects from the dead after giving up his life on the cross, who is the first person he meets? The very first person. Who is it? Oh, it's Mary Magdalene. Interesting how that works. Mary Magdalene, the very first person he meets after raising from the dead. Interesting how that works. Mary performed that act of charity. That alabaster jar of perfume. And then Jesus performed an act of integrity. He was on his knees in the Garden of Gethsemane praying. He was afraid. He was afraid about what he had to do. He knew that he was going to be nailed to the cross. He knew that he was going to be executed. He knew it was all a lie. He knew that it was going to be unfair and unjust. He knew it. But then he said, take this cup from me, but then no, not my will, but yours be done. And he went forward because guess what? Mary Magdalene's act of charity, he himself was able to mirror that act of charity, that act of love, and confer it upon the rest of us and forgive all of us such that the ISTJ superego is no longer judge, jury, and executioner for the rest of humanity. And he gave his life on the cross according to the story. And then he rose from the dead 3 days later. Wow. That's the power of an ENFP, folks. Mary Magdalene, you know, who he saw immediately afterwards. It goes on further than that. He performed that act of integrity after she performed that act of charity. Don't you get it? The ultimate act of integrity because of this ENFP woman's act of charity. That ultimate act of integrity because of her act of charity. Unbelievable. It goes further than that. Folks, this is love so strong that it actually conquers death. It goes beyond death. This golden pair, love so strong it goes beyond death because he went to her after raising from the dead. And then we have Mr. Eric Pogel from the Creation and Evolution subreddit, one of the world's foremost experts on both subjects, can debate both sides, saying, quote, "There's more evidence for the resurrection than there is evolution. If you don't believe me, take it up with him. You know, he's the expert and I don't dare debate him on either topic. Holy smokes. Wow." And no, I'm not trying to turn you on to Christians. I could care less about that. I'm just trying to tell the truth, folks. Take it for all the grains of salt. I don't care about church. I really don't care. I don't care about organized religion. I just care about telling the truth. And to be honest with you folks, I don't think Jesus lied to anyone. It's not my fault that everyone else talking about him, well, they're lying. But I don't think he lied. T.I. Child doesn't lie. Not like that. It is said, and often many people say, that damnation is in our future. Damnation is the future of our race. That we, like so many people say, that we're going to die and burn in hell. I don't know how many times I've heard that over and over and over again. But for a moment, let's assume that's true. Let's actually assume that's true. You know, I fell in love at one point in time when I was a teenager. I fell in love with an amazing INJ woman. She was exquisite. I wanted to marry her. I had such a high desire for her. I would do anything for her. And I had this whole future planned out for us and how we would be together and have a family and have a future. But then she didn't tell me. She had brain cancer. And she actually broke up with me because she said, you know, I don't want to get in the way of your life. You know, maybe she was an INFJ. Maybe she's an INTJ. She definitely was an INJ, but she basically sacrificed herself because she knew that if she told me the truth about her, that I would have stayed with her, that I would have been loyal, that I would have never have gone to university, that I would have completely adjusted my life for her sake, and she could not live with that. SC Inferior cannot live with that. So she broke up with me, and then she door slammed me. I was so foolish in those days. I thought she had abandoned me. Had I just been like, you know, had I had the SI Inferior guts, that endurance that I have now to not accept those words from her and just be like, you're full of shit. I ain't listening to that. You know what? I love you and I know you love me and you're full of it. Maybe then she would have been comfortable enough. Maybe then she would have been comfortable enough to tell me the truth about the fact that she had brain cancer and then she died. She died shortly thereafter. It's very sad. You ever see the film A Walk to Remember? Yeah, my high school life. It's funny. I brought her to church one time, and she criticized it. She criticized church pretty hard. And you know what? That's the first time I realized that, you know what? Maybe church is not all cracked up to be that it is. Maybe I need to humble myself. Maybe I need to realize that maybe there's some bullshit there, right? And she started the process. This woman started the process of freeing me from the nightmare that was the church that I was a part of, as well as being a victim of their church doctrine and all of the limitations that they put on my life that where I couldn't live in truth anymore, and my faith was based on a system and not a faith that's by something that I designed and that I discovered, and have a faith of my own with my own SI and theory instead of having it dictated to me by following rules. Let me tell you, folks, when your faith is dictated by rules, it's not exactly faith now, is it? It's just following a system. If you do X, you will receive Y. That's not faith. But she knew that, and she called me out on it, telling me for the first time in my entire life, I hear the words, Chase, you are a hypocrite. She was right. She's still right. But let's say that our race is doomed. Let's say that there is damnation for us. Let's say that we'll be subject to the judge, jury, and executioner of ISTJ, demon, and superego. Let's say it's coming. Let's assume for a moment that that's true. And let's say as I stand there before the judge, the INFJ judge, the one, who shed his blood, because then he owns the entire race. And then he tells me, yeah, Chase, you made it in. Come on in. Or no, Chase, by the way, you didn't make it. You're done. Well, he has TI child, right? His judgment is just. I will have no choice but to accept what he says, to the point where I would agree with his judgment. I would agree. But here's the difference, folks. Here's the difference. Let's say I do make it in. Let's say our race is split up. Let's say maybe only 17.5% of the entire race makes it into the kingdom of heaven, etc. And then we're all there. And according to the story that we end up having this big wedding, wedding to the Son of God, aka Jesus Christ. And we're having this wedding. We're sitting there and we're standing there and we're having a good time and having a great time. And then all of a sudden something's wrong. Something's wrong. I realize that woman that I fell in love with when I was a teenager, well, she's not there. That's not heaven, is it? It's not heaven. It's not heaven when our entire race is apart. That's not what heaven is. We've been partying for eons, right? It's funny how the original, whenever the Bible talks about eternal damnation, the word eternal, I did some research on this, is actually the word eonian, which means eons, which means not permanent. Interesting how that works. And then I realize, it's just wrong. It's just wrong to not have the people that I've met in my life that I have loved to not be there with me, right? I would sincerely hope that other people would feel the same way, right? And then I go to the Son of God, right? Jesus, who I'm supposedly married to according to what church teaches about the end of the world and how, Jesus is the bridegroom and we are the bride of Christ and getting married to the Son of God. And if he is actually my husband, I'm going to go up to him and I'm going to ask him respectfully, of course, and be like, hey, bring her to me. You have the power. You literally own the human race. You shed your blood and you resurrected. And you own our race because you made that sacrifice as a sacrificial lamb for remission of sins, the sins of the superego, because the superego is the source of sin nature. Will you please bring her to me? And he'll look at me and he'll say, no. And then I will respect his decision. But like any good woman, folks, I'm going to ask again. And then I'm going to ask again, and he'll say no. And then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring other people that, he's married to, other members of his wife, the bride of Christ, and bring those people to him and ask him, hey, bring these people to us. He'll say no. And they're like, fine. And then I'll go to an ENFP. Like, hey, help. I need an advocate. I need someone to advocate. Advocate for our race. Advocate for us, please. And you know what the ENFP will do? The ENFP will gather everyone around and be like, okay, let's make a deal. Because ENFPs are all about making deals. Oh, I love ENFP deals because you guys are so good at making deals. It's like, hey, let's make a deal. Here's the deal. You, Chase, are going to forgive that person because that person's father hurt you in this way, or you're going to forgive this person because their daughter molested you when you were young, and you're going to forgive them. And then this person over there who was hurt by the woman that you loved when you're a teenager, well, they're going to forgive that person. Oh, interesting. And then it becomes this rapid cross forgiveness. all the way across, where everyone in the kingdom of heaven has forgiven literally everybody. And then collectively, this ENFP, this advocate, will lead everybody in the kingdom of heaven to the footsteps of the throne of the Son of God, and all entreat with him as the united wife, because it is written in Genesis chapter 11, verse 6, if as one people who unite and come together and speak the same language, if they can accomplish all of this, then nothing will be impossible for them. So if the bride of Christ, all these people in the kingdom of heaven are put together in one place and are all advocating at the same time to the Son of God, his wife, and they have all forgiven everybody else all the wrongs for everything they've done, because the ENFP who led that way, would he not grant our request? He has the power to send people to the flames and to reclaim them from the flames. And then at last, he will grant our request and bring all of humanity together. And then it'll be like heaven after all. Because at last, humanity will be together. ENFPs, this is who you are. You are supposed to be advocating for the truth. You are supposed to be advocating for the perfections among the imperfect. That's what you do. You see the perfections in the INFJs, and you love them for it, and you forgive them for their imperfections, and then they mirror you. And then because they mirror you, like Jesus will mirror his bride, and he will mirror the bride's forgiveness, and then forgive everybody, and our race will be brought together. This is prophesied actually in the Apocalypse of Peter. It literally says, my Father will give unto them all life, all the kingdom, all of everything. You give it to them, all of you. And it is because of you that I have come. And it is because of you that and at your word, that I will have pity on all men. Do you know why he said that in the Apocalypse of Peter? That was the one verse in the Apocalypse of Peter that, the Nicene Creed decided that the Apocalypse of Peter should not be added to biblical canon, even though it had more historical backing than scholarly backing than half the Gospels. But no, it wasn't added in there because of that one verse, that Jesus could potentially crack everybody out of hell because he has the power to do so. Of course he has the power to do so, because his blood paid for it. He owns the human race. He made the sacrifice. Well, he gets to make the decision. And then he is mirroring the bride as led by that ENFP. Mirroring that bride, where that bride becomes that archetypical ENFP, entreating the INFJ husband to bring the rest of the people to find the perfections amongst the imperfections. And then the Son of God will mirror the bride and then have pity on all men and forgive all men. And then at last, all of humanity will be brought back together again. This is the purpose of this golden pair relationship, folks. I get that that's at a very high celestial level, but it is no different here in life. Do you know how hard it is to get INFJs to forgive people who have wronged them, people who have permanently etched their SI demon when they elect themselves judge, jury, and executioner? Do you know how hard it is? It's nigh impossible, unless, but not for the ENFP, who can find the perfections amongst the imperfections and forgive the INFJ such that the INFJ forgives others. It is necessary for our race. Let me tell you, ENFPs, you have to do this for your relationship. You have to do this in your golden pair. Your golden pair is supposed to be that beacon of light that helps lead our race to a better future. We can't do it without you. We can't do it without you. Understand your importance. You are at such a high level of importance you don't even realize it. And instead, you get what you spend on your own pleasures. You allow yourselves to become depraved, and then the INFJs become corrupt because of you. And then all will burn because of it. Rise above yourselves, ENFPs. Become something more. It's your duty. You're supposed to be there to help us find the perfections amongst the imperfections. It's super important. mankind, especially ENFPs, INFJs, you guys need to do what is right versus what is easy. Why else do I talk about chapter 7 and 12 rules for life? Do what is meaningful and not expedient. This is the completion of everything. This is the fulfillment of everything. No wonder mankind is commanded by Jesus, commanded by the Gospels, commanded by the Bible to love your neighbor as yourself, to love your enemies, to forgive one another. This is why, so that this is even possible to begin with, so that the advocate can stand up and lead us before the feet of the Son of God and entreat him to have mercy on our race as a whole. And then our race is complete, and then it really is heaven after all, because everybody is there and nobody is left out. Such is the way of our future, provided you ENFPs can rise to the occasion and give the INFJs what they need to be forgiving at last. Love your neighbors yourself. You have no excuse. Love, for the day is near. Death is coming, and it is coming for all of us, folks. I know the transhumanists are coming to try to prevent death. Don't buy into their lies. You don't have to buy into their lies. Because of ENFPs, we actually have a future. We have forgiveness. We have mercy because of their charity. I'm so thankful. Thank you, ENFPs. Thank you for who you are and what you do. Thank you for finding the perfections amongst the imperfections. Thank you for being so forgiving and sympathetic. I know I've stomped on you. I know I have. Because you guys get so selfish. You get so depraved. And you don't even see your own value. You really think that you're this amazing person. You really think, you just let it all go to your head, just like INFJs do with their God complex. That's not who you are. Your golden pair is supposed to be that beacon of light. Rise to the occasion, ENFPs. You're supposed to. Let go of the selfishness. Let go of the depravity. And instead be charitable. Instead find the perfections amongst the imperfections. Give. So that the INFJ can give. So that the INFJ will stop feeling worthless and useless. So that the INFJ will be able to tell the truth and have the freedom to tell the truth. The freedom of choice to be able to find a path forward, to be able to trailblaze that path forward as a result of the inspiration you provide them, ENFPs. They need you. They need your loyalty. They need you not to abandon them. You are supposed to champion for the INFJ in as much as you are supposed to champion our race. Because without you championing for us, we won't have a future. There's no hope. Not without you. And that is why, folks, this golden pair, the eighth golden pair, literally is the engine of hope. Because we can have hope because of the love between an ENFP and an INFJ. We have a future. We have a heaven to go to because of people like you. If you found this lecture useful, helpful, educational, enlightening, please subscribe to the channel.